Yes, well, we are about to talk about a subject which is quite controversial, and that's because the powers that be, the authorities, be they governments, be the scientific community, be the media, whatever, the medical profession, do not want you and I, the average person, to know about this matter. So it's been covered up quite successfully, I would say, since we first heard about the approach of Nibiru way back in 1983. Now, we'll get to that later or a lot later. And I should also say that we won't be able to get through the entire presentation this evening. So Chandra and I briefly just talked about the possibility of having a second session or part of a second session next week. So we've got a lot to cover, and I'll just go ahead and start. Okay, the first slide shows the approximate, the red line, which is sort of looping around the center and then tapering off to the right side, shows where Nibiru comes from, which is the constellation Orion. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is important, very important. We have to acknowledge your freedom to think. We have to acknowledge your free will to come to your own conclusions. Now, the info from this presentation comes from the Zetatalk website, which is www.zetatalk.com. And there is a vast amount of information there. I've been studying all that for the past 14 years. And my conclusion at this point in time is that while all the info is not correct, it has an overall accuracy rating of about 90%, and that's pretty high. The info about the Earth changes and causes, that's about 99% accurate. Marty, could we ask you to mute your audio, please?
Yeah, Matt, sorry.
Thanks. You will have to make up your own mind about what is presented here, which once again is from the Zetatalk website. It's extremely important, for a lot of what I'm going to say is controversial in terms of mass consciousness and verifiable science. Okay, next slide, Kat, please. Okay, this is Nancy Lieder, a lady of German descent who lives in the state of Wisconsin in the United States. She has been a channel for the Zetas. She's been doing this since 1995, and she's been posting a lot of very interesting information on Zetatalk website since that time. I put up her photo so you can get an energy read, how you feel about her energy, and just to get a feel of an impression of who she is and what she represents. Okay, next slide, please. All right, these are the Zetas, and they're extraterrestrials from the star system Zeta Reticuli. You may be familiar or partly familiar with the photograph on the left. It's actually a photograph of an alien. We think it's from the 1950s, not exactly sure. And on the right, there's an artist impression. Now, the Zetas claim to be an advanced race of extraterrestrials, and they have one particular talent or ability, which is the ability to mentally read the thoughts of anyone on the planet. They can tune in. That's their claim. You can believe it or not as you wish. They claim to be able to read the minds of any individual on the planet, and therefore they can access information which for most of us is simply impossible to access or even verify. Okay, next slide, please. Just a minute here. Okay, Nibiru is the most common name used today for this very interesting object. The word comes from the Sumerian or Chaldean civilizations. Now, some writers talk about it as nemesis. The search for Planet X is known to the astronomical or scientific community. And what they don't know, or rather dismiss as mere fantasy, is that Nibiru is Planet X. Right, Nibiru is actually mentioned in the Old Testament Bible, believe it or not, but it's called wormwood. And you can look up the biblical references to wormwood at your leisure. Now, in South America, the Spanish word used is Hercolubus. I think I'm pronouncing that Hercolubus. Okay, let's talk about basic facts and figures of Nibiru. All right, it's a strange hybrid. It is a strange hybrid. It's about 85% brown dwarf star, and the rest is a planet where water is a predominant element. Now, looking up from the surface of Nibiru, the sky would appear to be cream-colored. Nibiru is occupied by a race of hominoid beings, and they're known as the Anunnaki. And you can probably find a lot of information on the internet about the Anunnaki. Some of it is possibly valuable, some of it is speculative, some of it is probably not worth much, and that's the way it is on the internet these days. The Anunnaki with interaction with humans during past transits of Nibiru is a very complex subject. It's very complex. According to Zetatalk, there is currently no contact between humans and Anunnaki allowed. Next slide, please. Appearance. Nibiru is surrounded by a cloud of brown-colored dust, which obscures its visibility. And that's very important to understand. Brown-colored or reddish-brown colored. Nibiru has 2 major moons, and several minor moon clusters are moon swirls. Its appearance in space resembles the form of a double helix. And we can see in the NASA photo below, and especially the enlargement on the lower right-hand side, that yes, NASA is quite aware of Nibiru. And of course, they've been covering it up. They've been lying about it for, I don't know, well, since 1983, when it was first detected far out in space. Okay, Nibiru has a long dust tail. It's reddish brown in color, which contains small rocks, dust, and greasy petroblobs. The tail is highly magnetized and can swoop or waft, moving independently of Nibiru itself. And that's an extremely important factor, because the fact that Nibiru has not arrived yet doesn't mean that the tail of Nibiru has not been able to sweep over the Earth for quite a while now, actually, several years, and cause a lot of very strange phenomena which scientists cannot explain and the authorities do not want to report because they don't want people to know about it. All right, what's the size of Nibiru? It's about 4 times the size of Earth, and so it's about as big as Uranus, with its diameter just over 50,000 kilometers, and or Neptune. The diameter of Neptune is just under 50,000 kilometers. Okay, next one, please. Okay, incredibly, the mass or density of Nibiru is said to be 23 times that of Earth, and that is a very, very important figure. It's because Nibiru has less silica or sand than Earth, according to the Zetas. All right, what does it mean? It means that the gravitational pull and electromagnetic field of Nibiru is far, far greater than that of Earth, and that is incredibly important. Such influence has caused dramatically and drastically much of the Earth changes upheavals we have witnessed here in the last 20 years. But of course, the authorities, the powers that be, do not want you to know that. But that is, as far as I'm concerned, the fact of the matter. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about the interstellar orbit of Nibiru. It has a strange or eccentric interstellar orbit. It's in the shape of a huge ellipse or ovoid. One focus or turning point of the orbit is our sun. The other focus or turning point is a dead star located in outer space far away from our solar system. When I say dead star, it's actually a star that never actually ignited. I was reading Zetatalk just this morning, and that was a clarification. This star, way out in space, we don't even know the direction, never actually was able to ignite to become a star or a sun. Okay, the periodicity or time sequence it takes for Nibiru taking to return to the same point in its orbit is somewhere between 3,600 and 3,650 Earth years. And that, of course, is a very long time. All right. Nibiru entered our inner solar system, according to Zetatalk, in March 2003 on its latest transit, a slingshot or boomerang movement past the sun. It's now heading out of the solar system, located somewhere near or around the orbit of Venus. Next one, please. Okay, that means the last time that Nibiru hit town or arrived in our inner solar system and started doing strange things on the Earth was about 1,600 to 1,650 BC. So what happened then when Nibiru was last in town? Well, there was a major eruption in the Aegean Sea. A volcano on the island of Thera, and it's now known as Santorini, erupted. And this is a quote from Wikipedia. The island was the site of one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history. The Minoan eruption, sometimes called the Thera eruption, which occurred about 3,600 years ago at the height of the Minoan civilization. So there's that magic figure again, 3,600 years. And that eruption wiped out the city of Akrotiri in South Terra. And archaeologists in the last decades have done a lot of uncovering, and I was actually able to view those frescoes many years ago when I visited. Okay, next slide. Okay, the eruption of the Terra Santorini volcano caused a gigantic tidal wave to form, which moved south and then badly damaged or even destroyed the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete. And the major city there was Knossos. Another quote from Wikipedia, it may have led indirectly to the collapse of the Minoan civilization on the island of Crete, which was 110 kilometers to the south of Santorini, through a gigantic tsunami. Next slide, please. Okay, what was happening down in Egypt? Well, this was interesting because that was the period of Moses. And Moses, the leader of the Hebrews, and there was a big struggle going on between Pharaoh, one of the Ramses boys, I believe, and Moses over the liberation of the Hebrew people. Now, the interesting thing is that from my research and understanding, 9 of the 10 biblical plagues of Egypt were related in one way or the other to the approach of Nibiru and its effect on Earth in that era. And once again, 1600 or 1650 BC. Now, as you may remember from the Bible, if you studied that particular episode, there was a cloud by day in the sky and a pillar of fire by night, which, according to the Bible, guided Moses and the Hebrews through the Sinai Desert after they left Egypt. Next slide, please. Nearby in old Chaldea and Sumeria, and that's present-day Iraq, there was some interaction between humans and the Anunnaki, the inhabitants of Nibiru. Some of the interaction was positive, but a lot was negative. And as far as we know about the positive interaction, it was the more developed individuals among the Anunnaki who were communicating with the priests of Chaldea and Samaria. But as far as the masses of Anunnaki, it was a different story. Very complex subject, and we don't really know a lot about it. The Anunnaki are said to be about 8 or 9 feet in height, and some took advantage of humans by enslaving them. At that point in time, there was interaction between the two races was permitted, but not now. Next slide, please. All right. I'm sure you've all heard the story of Samson in the Old Testament, Samson and Delilah. These photos are from a 1949 Hollywood movie. Samson, according to Zetatalk, was the son of an Anunnaki father and an earthling mother. And that's why he possessed phenomenal strength. Because when your father is 8 or 9 feet high, he's going to pass some special genes on to any progeny. And that's the esoteric or inner explanation of the strength of Samson, according to what we understand. Next slide, please. Okay, meanwhile, in China, Nibiru was having an eye-popping effect on the climate and local landscape. And this is preserved in the Sichuan province Long Eye pottery. And it's from a site in China called the Samsung Ancestral Ruin Site. And you can see from the photos, especially the top two, the eyes are actually popping out of the head. And that's because what they were witnessing was so strange, so unusual, that it was literally eye-popping. Now, the photograph on the left, the bottom left-hand side and the right side show the elongated ears. And they refer to the hearing of clapping sounds or trumpets thundering in heaven caused by Nibiru's passage. So it was having quite an effect right around the world at that point in time. Next slide, please. Across the water in Japan, ancient Jomon pottery depicted the sloshing of the waters on all sides of the island. And this was caused by the extreme tidal waves unleashed by the passage of Nibiru. And there you can see 3 different Jomon pottery pieces, which depict that very significant event. Next slide, please. Okay, and then came some extraterrestrial visitors. They are called the Dogu in Japanese, and they help care for survivors in Japan after the Nibiru passage. So that's what they look like, or that's how they represented according to the ancient Japanese artists of the time. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about the photos of Nibiru, because Nibiru, as mentioned, has been dismissed as a fantasy, an illusion, crazy concept that has no base whatsoever by the establishment. That's to say, the scientific community, the astronomers, governments of the world, medical profession, and of course the media. So they're saying it's just complete fantasy, no basis whatsoever to believe in Nibiru, but we have photographs. Sorry, folks. Okay. Because, could we go back to the previous one, Kat, just briefly? Okay, because Nibiru routed the sun on its journey out of the inner solar system, it is, or actually, I say it was, because I originally prepared this in, I think, 2012. It was only visible close to the sun. That means at that point in time, it was only visible around sunrise or sunset, dawn or dusk on any given day. Okay, next one, please. Okay, here's a good photo of what we were seeing in the sky around the early days of the appearance of Nibiru in the solar system. And as you can see, June of 2003, and if you look at the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock position of the sun, you can see a little speck or dot of light. That's Nibiru.
Interesting.
Gretchen, can I ask you to mute your...
Sorry?
Can you mute it, please?
Hang on a sec. No, sorry, I can't.
Well, if you can
hang on a
somehow
sec.
damp
Hang
down
on.
the sound, because yeah.
Because I'm not saying anything. Okay.
No, but we're getting some. Okay, you got it now. I see it now. You got it. Thank you very much. Okay, so you look at the 4 o'clock position, the 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. It's just a little dot, and if you didn't look closely, you might even miss it. Okay, next photo, next slide. This is New Zealand in March of 2011. You can see the little dot has separated from the sun a bit, and it's a lot more visible. Next slide, please. Okay, now Eric Trump, the son of President Donald Trump, took this photo in, just a second, I've got to admit someone here. He took this photo in March 2018. He posted it twice on his social media page. It's the sun rising over the Trump golf club in Washington. And in the next slide, we'll see a close-up of that photograph. And you can see, once again, at the 4 o'clock, approximately 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock position, a little tail or stream of light moving out from the sun. And that's Nibiru. And in those days, that was all we could get of it. We couldn't really get any close-up or whatever. Okay, Nibiru sometimes, or quite often, I should say, appears as a second sun persona. Okay, sometimes it appears as a second sun beside our sun, and you can see in these photographs, and I don't remember where they were taken or even when, but you can clearly see something, a small orb of light in all 3 photographs on the side of the sun. So that's the sun's light melting off the dust cloud that covers Nibiru. Okay, we got to admit someone else. Paula, very good. All right, this is a pretty good capture from Taiwan in March of 2011. And it was appears as a second sun. Now, this actually was shown on Taiwanese television, from what I can understand, and therefore the caption below the photograph. They didn't explain what it was, as far as I know. They just said, "Oh, gee, a number of people have seen this very strange sight, and here's a photograph." So we thought we would report it, and yes, and so we'll proceed to the next one. Okay, now it's all changed though in a big way, because recent photos of Nibiru are remarkable, because Nibiru is now visible with the naked eye, and that is a really big change. And it's no longer the little speck or dot of light, dusty dot of light next to the sun. These photographs and the ones that follow are from December 2024, just a few months ago. Now, these photographs were taken in a region of Russia, Krasnoyarsk. And you can see in the second photograph from the left a small dot of light above a house, it appears. And then there are enlargements on the two far right photographs. This is very unusual because normally, according to the previous photos, Nibiru was only visible as a small dot of light, really just directly around the sun, the orb of the sun. But now it's coming close enough so it can be perceived in its own right as its own object. All right, this is from, could we backplay? Yeah. But this is from analysis from Zetatalk. What is that brightly lit object in the sky at sundown seen by many with their naked eye? This does not have the characteristics of a second sun, with the sunlight bouncing off the vast dust cloud of Nibiru, but rather this is sunlight bouncing off Nibiru itself. And this is a game changer, big game changer. Okay, next one, please. Okay, this is some photos from Siberia. It shows the sun over the horizon to the right with the brightly lit Nibiru complex to the left in the view. Now you can see the two photos in the bottom right-hand side, the naked eye view from Siberia, and you can also in the big photograph on the left, you can see the small dot of light over the house there. And this is a big step forward if you want. It's a progressive step in the revelation of Nibiru that does exist, and it can be seen in the sky. And of course, these captures, these photos, these occurrences are very, very worrying to the establishment because they've been telling us since 1983 that Nibiru is just a fantasy, doesn't exist. Well, if so, what is that in the sky? Next one, please. This is also December of last year, 2024. Worldwide, people are reporting this bright Nibiru complex in the late afternoon. And here's one report from Canada. These are naked eye photos as well as photos taken with a floppy disk filter. Now, the three photos on the top are from a floppy disk. And you may remember maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, instead of USB devices, we were using floppy disks. Take the insert out of the floppy disk and it serves as a filter. And that was how these photos on the top were taken. And you can see something is going on, but it's not that clear. However, you look at the bottom row of photographs and you can see that there is a small speck around the 4 o'clock position of the sun, but there's separation between that speck and the sun, and that represents a very significant advancement. Okay, and the person took the images with a cheap Samsung phone with and without a floppy disk filter sometime in December 2024. Next slide, please. Okay, this is also December 2024. In fact, it's December 1st, if you can read the small writing in the upper photo.
Yeah.
James from Idaho confirms that unfiltered, the heavily sharded Nibiru is quite visible. Now, the photograph or the enlargement of the photograph in the bottom right-hand corner is very significant, in my opinion, because it shows the sphere of Nibiru itself, and it's sort of what's coming out from that sphere is the dust tail. The dust tail and also the moons. You can't really see the moons in that photograph, but it's obviously trailing a lot of debris, however you want to describe it. And once again, that represents an advancement or a step forward in clarity of photographs of Nibiru, which we can get from Earth. Next photo, please. Okay, this is interesting because the photo on the right, which is slightly enhanced, appears to be similar. The image or the projection of the image, whatever you want to call it, to some religious artifacts which were used way back in Egypt. Now, on the left, the top artifact is called the Ankh, and I don't think the Ankh was related to Nibiru. It was a healing object of considerable power. I believe that the object in the bottom left-hand corner, though, is somehow directly related to the appearance of Nibiru. And don't forget that was 1,600 or 1650 BC when Egypt was flourishing. Next photo, please. All right. Since early December 2024, Nibiru has become visible by the naked eye. And the public worldwide has been able to see and capture Nibiru on film. You don't need a telescopic lens. You don't need photo enhancements. This was December 11th in Idaho, and it was taken by the same individual, James, that took the two previous photographs. And you can see Nibiru in the bottom right-hand corner there. And the caption is Nibiru showing the double helix illuminated from the sun's rays as Nibiru's side facing away from the sun is darkened. So we've got the photos. Thank you very much, establishment. And I don't think you can explain this away no matter how hard you try. Next photo, please. All right, this is December 15th, also from Idaho and also from James. And you see once again, there's something up there near the sun. It's no longer hovering around the periphery of the sun and separating in its own right. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Now, in my opinion, this is the most significant photo of Nibiru, the Nibiru complex, taken to date anywhere in the world. It was taken in December 14th from China, and it was posted on the Zetatalk follower site. That's a Twitter X site. The red dust in the vast tail of Nibiru is creating an arch for Nibiru and its two dominant moons. And we can see on the close-up on the left-hand side that Nibiru is in the middle of that. There's sort of a spherical object. The two dominant moons are further down, let's say, on either side, and you got the double helix tail. That is an extremely significant photo. It's the clearest photo that I think we've got anywhere in the world at this point in time. But the scientists are ignoring it. Yeah, maybe it's an optical illusion. Who knows? Next slide, please. All right, December 20th, a photo from Australia shows Nibiru at the 9 o'clock position. Okay, in the Northern Hemisphere, they see Nibiru at the 3 o'clock position. Then in Australia, it would appear at the 9 o'clock position. Great catch, Australia. And it appears from the caption to be a webcam from the city of Parramatta in Western Sydney. So they weren't looking for Nibiru. They just caught it on a webcam. So that shows you just how much it's been popping up all over the world. Next photo, please. All right, this is an interesting photo from Australia. Late August 2020, Sunshine Coast. I was sent this by an individual after they heard a lecture I gave in that year, December 2020 was. And what we see here now is on the right-hand side, the orb of the sun, and on the left-hand side, this sort of huge amorphous glowing light. Well, that's not actually Nibiru. It's sunlight bouncing off the tail of Nibiru. And that's why it's sort of shapeless or amorphous. It doesn't have any clear shape. So we've been getting all sorts of these photos, probably hundreds of them, maybe thousands, who knows, in the last 20 years. And they're getting more clear now. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about Nibiru's influence on Earth. It's very much influencing things on Earth. We can start with the magnetic pole of Earth, the North Pole, and that's shifting much faster than scientists can explain. And you can see in the diagram there where it was back in 1900, and then between 1900 and 1920, it was moving a little bit. It started to speed up maybe around 1930 or whatever. But since 2000, which is the red dot in the center of that red line, it has really moved far and fast. Now, scientists can't really explain this. They know it's happening, but they don't or cannot explain it. Now, the Zetatalk explanation is that the north magnetic pole of Nibiru is pushing hard against the north magnetic pole of Earth. So it's forcing Earth's north magnetic pole to move very far and very fast. Next slide, please. And what about increased volcanic activity since 2003? Haven't we been seeing a lot more volcanoes right around the world? Recent eruptions in Iceland, and I think there are some others I can't think of. But anyway, a far greater incidence of volcanic activity than in previous decades. Next slide, please. And increased earthquake activity since 2003. And of course, we've seen so many of those. In fact, in the last few weeks, we're seeing them on a daily basis, basically. Chandra sent me an email just this morning to talk about there was an earthquake to the west of Sydney, Western Sydney, or the Blue Mountains somewhere. I think it was around 5 on the Richter scale. And then there was a big quake in Turkey, apparently. That panicked a lot of people in Istanbul. And there was another quake around the Philippines, just within 24 hours. So the Earth is moving and quaking quite significantly, especially in recent years. And once again, according to Zeta Talk, that's due to Nibiru, no other factor. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a very complex matter. It's difficult to explain in 2 dimensions because it's basically a 4-dimensional movement. Time and space, the 3 dimensions of space and plus the 4th dimension of time. The Earth is wobbling on a daily basis thanks to Nibiru's influence, gravitational influence, electromagnetic influence. And that's the real cause of global climatic changes and extreme weather events. But because the establishment is covering up Nibiru, they don't want you or me or any other of the, I guess now 8 billion people around the planet to know this. They're talking about other causes, and we'll get to that slide a little bit later. But basically, it's moving. If you could sort of put a very large stick or paintbrush on the North Pole and the South Pole, and they could somehow record the movement of the Earth in a 24-hour period, you would see it's in the shape of a figure 8. And you can see on the left there, the India face, the sun is sort of at the top of that. When it gets to New Zealand, it's at the side. When it hits the Americas, it's at the bottom, and so on. It's a complex movement, and it's hard to fully explain it without sort of more visual aids, but that's a good example of what's happening. That's a daily Earth wobble. Now, I wonder how many of you good people listening to this have noticed during the past few years that the sun has been setting in a different place from where it should be, especially between mid-November and mid-February, the summer months here. Well, I started to notice this about, I think, 5 years ago. It's not setting due south, no, but it's setting in a far more southerly direction than it should be.
I've noticed it with my veggie gardening all the time. It's actually helped me. It's giving my garden better sun these days. It's probably be more than 5 years ago, I reckon, when I first
could well have
noticed
been. Well, you see, the gardeners of the world, Sri Kirti, myself, and maybe some of you other people, we're out in the air, the sunshine. So especially around sunset or whatever, we see these things and we say, oh yeah, the sun is actually setting a lot further south than it actually should be. Not only that, but sometimes I see the moon and other planets rising far more to the north than they should be. And so it doesn't always happen. It's not every time the moon rises or a planet rises that you see it too far north, but it's happened enough that I know something is definitely going on. But what do we know, right? We're not professional astronomers. We're not scientists. So what do we know? We're just fantasizing, right? Okay, next slide. According to Zeta Talk, it's a daily Earth wobble, and that started with Nibiru's entry into the inner solar system in March 2003, and that's been getting ever more extreme since then. That's the real cause of global climatic changes. And these include both record hot and cold temperatures and related weather extremes. And once again, the diagram, you can see sort of that, get an image of that swing. Once again, it's hard to put into words. You have to have a sort of a more geometrically inclined mind, which astrologers do, which is good because we study that stuff. Okay, now I think, yeah. Now next slide, please. These are weather patterns in the United States, starting with the earliest 2005 on the left side there, to February of 2019. And you can see this strange serpentine pattern over North America, extending up into Canada in the north and Mexico in the south. And that's all due to the daily Earth wobble of Nibiru, especially when at the very top, 2014, you can see on the right-hand side, the cool sector of America around the Great Lakes and whatever. And then just to the west, there was a very large segment which was hot. So this has been happening, and the weather has been getting more and more extreme, as we are aware, with each passing year. Okay, next one, please. Okay, I think at this point in time, I'm going to take a brief pause and ask if anyone has any questions or comments on what we have covered thus far. So you feel free to unmute your mics and ask any questions or offer any comments, and I will try to answer questions that if you have them.
So, do you think the people from Nibiru, the Anunnaki, were helping the Egyptians to build the pyramids?
According to Zeta Talk, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Hmm.
The pyramids were definitely not built by humans alone.
No, no.
They had extraterrestrial help.
Hmm.
And in fact, it's interesting, just today, just before I tuned into this, there was an announcement of someone has found a hidden chamber in the Great Pyramid in Giza. No, I haven't studied it. I don't know any details, but it's sort of popped out of the blue that was announced just today. Any other comments?
Oh, sorry.
Any other comments?
Hmm.
Okay, I think we'll go back to the slideshow then, Kat. You'd be so kind. Okay, this is very interesting. The boundary between day and night at any given time and place on Earth is a line of division called the terminator. I don't know why they chose that term. It's a strange one to me, but anyway, as we know, the sun illuminates any given day. The sun is illuminating half the Earth, the other half is in darkness. Next slide, please. Something very strange happened in July of 2018, and it was due to the daily Earth wobble. Some regions in Siberia and northern Russia actually experienced night-like darkness in the middle of a summer's day. Okay, now the bottom explanation, which is in blue, was a report from the Russian media. Russia saw their day turn into complete darkness for almost 3 hours on July 20th, 2018. The type in black is the Zeta Talk explanation. Did the globe have a severe wobble on the 24th of July, or it should actually be the 20th, enough to cause a temporary day into night shift for a part of Siberia? The gloom was not caused by a cloud cover, and that's the cover story from the authorities. It was the wobble. So basically, that part of Siberia tipped over the terminator into night for 3 hours due to the daily Earth wobble. Next slide, please. And the strange thing happened a month later in Canada, the province of Alberta in Western Canada. It occurred at a place called Grand Prairie. Namely, the darkness appeared during a summer's day, and you can see the photos there. There's one that says this was Valley View at noon, and then Valley View at 3 p.m., Valley View at 2 p.m., 2:30 p.m., and then by 4:13 p.m., it had returned to normal. So what happened? Well, the authorities said, yeah, there was smoke from bushfires, forest fires that blew into Valley View and obscured the sun. That was the official cover story. Ridiculous, of course. It basically tipped over the terminator into the night side of the Earth, and then it tipped back about 3 hours later, 3.5 hours later, 4 hours later. Now, to my knowledge, that has not happened since then, but it did happen in those two places in those 2 months in 2018. So something very strange is going on. And of course, we're not being given the explanation from the authorities to describe or understand, or help us understand what's really happening. Next one, please. Okay, what's the truth about global warming and climate change? And this has been a very hot topic, not just for the past few years, but for decades now. What is actually going on? Well, there are three main scenarios being pushed by various groups. And scenario number one, the climatic changes and apparent extreme weather events being witnessed all around the earth now in recent years are not unusual or alarming. They're just part of the usual timely changes in the Earth's weather. And we find this opinion being voiced by the right wing of politics and the extreme right wing of politics. Here in Australia, that would be the Nationals. The Nationals are all pretty well opposed to the concept of climate change. They say it doesn't exist. Probably about half the Liberal Party would be in agreement. And I've had some interesting email exchanges with people who say, no, it's just nothing unusual. Nothing spectacular. This just happened before, and it's just part of the climatic change cycle over vast periods of time. So nothing to get excited about. Well, sorry, I disagree. Now, the second opinion or view is what we've been hearing for decades now from the establishment, especially the media, the IPC, I think it's called, in the United Nations. Climatic changes, extreme weather events are directly related to global warming. In particular, the greenhouse gases being pumped into the atmosphere on a daily basis. We've heard that one for quite a while now. Sadly, that has to be dismissed as well, because we're also seeing extreme events on the cold end, record-breaking cold temperatures. For example, maybe not so much in this country, Australia, but when President Trump was inaugurated in January this year in Washington, they had to hold the inauguration inside because it was so cold, freezing in DC. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, Los Angeles was burning. So we get these extremes even within the same country that we're witnessing. So I'm sorry, it couldn't be related to global warming, because if things were happening in a global warming scenario, we wouldn't be seeing these record-breaking cold temperatures. Now, the third opinion or view is what I call the wild conspiracy theory view, which is quite prevalent, actually. I've gotten a lot of messages in the last few years from people who swear that the governments of the world are causing all this. In particular, the HAARP, that's the big daddy HAARP is in Alaska, Gakona, Alaska. And they claim there are many HAARPs located in various regions of the Earth. They also claim that there are satellites orbiting the Earth with what they call DEWs, distant energy weapons. And these DEWs can shoot down lasers and create havoc. And that's what a lot of people claim and believe, amazingly enough. That's what started the fires in Los Angeles in January. And you see, because people don't understand the truth of what's going on, and the governments aren't telling them, and the scientists aren't telling them, they're giving this ridiculous cover story. People latch onto this stuff because they know something big is happening, and they can't explain it, so they latch onto these weird, wild I call them space cowboy conspiracy theories. That's the world we live in, my friends. Next slide, please. Okay, here's a Zetatalk explanation. It's rather simple if you understand about the daily Earth wobble. Anywhere on the globe, when the daily Earth wobble exposes that region to more sunlight than usual, there is a rise in the temperatures in that region, and sometimes very much above the seasonal norm. The reverse is also true. When any region receives seasonally less sunlight than normal, there's a drop in the temperature and sometimes very much below average. And that's why we're seeing these extremes of hot to cold, sometimes in the same region, sometimes in the same city or rural region within a space of a few months. Now, the scientists and climate change experts, and they're all under the control management of the predatory elite. And I'm sure Marty, who's listening to this, could fill your ear with on that subject, but I won't give him the chance. Simply won't tell us the truth in that regard. Sad to say. So we're getting these ridiculous cover stories. Next slide, please. Okay, there's another major factor. Due to the interaction of the gravitational and electromagnetic fields of Nibiru and the Earth, the molten core of Earth is heating up. And that is a real reason that the Great Barrier Reef on the coast of Queensland is bleaching and drying and dying, actually. And sorry, this has nothing whatsoever to do with man-made atmospheric greenhouse gas emissions in the global warming theory. Now, yes, there is some chemical runoff from farms on the coast, Queensland coast, using whatever chemicals into the water, and they are having a negative effect, detrimental effect on the sea life, the ocean life. But they're not enough per se to cause the massive bleaching and dying of coral that we've seen in the last many years. It's the Earth's core which is heating up. But the powers that be, especially the scientists, the governments, they don't want you and I to know about it. Hey, we might get excited, we might get alarmed, we might get panicked, we might demand some sort of action. And of course, they don't want that. Next slide, please. Okay, the effects of Nibiru on Earth, and now we're getting into the real heart of the matter. The tectonic plates of the Earth are moving. They are rocking and rolling. They're shifting and shaking as they have not done for the past 3,600 years. 3,600. That is the cycle of Nibiru. So that means the last time we saw such huge tectonic plate activity was around 1600, 1650 BC, when Nibiru last hit town. Now, so these plates are all shifting and shuffling around and moving like they have done for millenniums, really. And we'll look at a few of the specific plates in the next slide. So the next slide, please. Okay, we start with the Australian and Indian plates. They are distinct. They're two definite different plates. But strangely enough, they move as one. So we talk about the Indo-Australian plate. And according to Zetatalk, this is the break for the entire planet. When the Indo-Australian plate is stable, the brakes are on, and we don't get much tectonic plate movement. But when our plate, the Indo-Australian plate, starts to move, the brakes come off, and that means a lot of movement in just about every tectonic plate right around the planet. And that's what we have been seeing in recent weeks, recent months, recent years. Next slide, please. Okay, Shri Kirti sent out this diagram, I think about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. Wow. The week ending 16 April 2025. Now let's hone in on Australia. You can see these red dots and yellow dots and whatever. And guess what, folks? They are all on the outline, the eastern edge of the Australian plate and the northern edge of the Australian plate, especially the northern edge. What is the northern edge of the Australia plate doing to the plate to the north, which is the Sunda plate on which Indonesia rests? Well, according to Zetatalk, and I think scientists would probably agree on this one, the northern edge of the Australian plate is pushing down or crushing the southern edge of the Sunda plate. And that's bad news, quite bad news, in fact, for the residents of Indonesia, especially Jakarta, because Jakarta is going down. Jakarta is sinking beneath the waves. We've seen reports of that, not much because the media is covering it up. They don't want people to know. In recent years, and in fact, I think they announced last year they wanted to build a new capital city somewhere. See, they know Jakarta is going down, and there's nothing they can do to save it because these tectonic plates can't be stopped. Whatever humans do, they cannot stop the movement of these plates. So they're moving. They're building a new capital somewhere. I don't know where. And you can see the sort of chain reaction you see around Japan, to the east of Japan, this sort of series of quakes and whatever. And that's where the Pacific plate to the east subducts or dives under the plate on which Japan is placed. So we're getting a lot of seismic activity there. You can see if you look back at the Australian plate to the left side, upper left side, it's sort of curves around and moves north and into India. And that is the part of where the Indian plate is. And as mentioned, the Indo-Australian plate moves as one. So we're getting these earthquakes there. Another big zone of earthquakes is around the Mediterranean Sea. And as we'll see very shortly, that's because there's big movement in the African tectonic plate, and the Mediterranean Sea is actually widening because Africa is dropping and twisting to the right, twisting clockwise. And that's why the Mediterranean is quaking. You may remember that about a month and a half ago, the residents of Santorini, the island of Santorini, many of them evacuated because they were getting so many quakes and aftershocks. Gee, why is that? I wonder why that's happening. Oh, well, guess what? The African plate is moving, and the floor, the seabed of the Mediterranean is thus widening, and that's creating this seismic activity. Now, the other big activity is on the west coast of South America, right up through Central America and into parts of the United States. And the analysis or discussion or explanation is that South America rests on the South American plate, which is shifting to the west. It's rolling or shifting. And that's not good news for the west coast of South America, nor is it good news for Central America, which is going to be particularly hard hit by what is coming according to Zetitov. Next slide, please. Okay, now you probably all heard of the earthquake of earlier this month, 7 April, caused considerable damage in Myanmar, Burma, and Thailand. It was reported at 7.7 magnitude. It's a big one. Okay, this was caused by a snapping of a portion of the Sunda plate, according to Zetitov. Now, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe 3, I presented an analysis of why this happened. And of course, it was due to tectonic plate movement. I was unaware at that point in time it was actually a portion of the Sunda plate actually snapped off and caused this humongous earthquake. But now we know that that's basically what happened. Next one, please. Okay, let's talk about the North America plate. First of all, it's a huge, massive plate, as you can see. And even more important, it intersects. You got the Pacific plate to the west, on the left side, and these small platelets like the Juan de Fuca subplate. It's actually not a plate itself; it's a subplate. To the east of Greenland, you got the Eurasian plate, and then South American plate in the bottom right-hand corner, and so on. So the North American plate is making some major movements now, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that right now. So next slide, please. Okay, someone is not muted. Paula, do you think you can mute your iPad? I don't think, yeah, there you go. Very, thank you. Okay, what's happening? Unfortunately, the North American plate is being stretched or ripped apart by stresses and strains. In the United States, the northeastern rock substrata portion of that nation, which is New England and the eastern states, is moving north and east, or it's being pulled north and east, we could say. The southwestern portion of that nation, California and Nevada down in the northeast Mexico, is being pulled south and west. And the line of division between the portions is marked approximately by the Mississippi River, which you can see is marked in red on the map at the bottom. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is from Benjamin Fulford, a very interesting man who sometimes has some really accurate information and sometimes he misses it by a mile, but you know, so you've got to have some discrimination when you read reports from Benjamin Fulford, but he's done a lot of good work. Now you can see as of June 2023, approaching 2 years ago, these well, some of them, the black lines, some of them are fault lines, some of them are just stress zones. And you can see certainly the west coast of the US, right up into Canada, southern part of Canada, and especially down into Mexico, the southern part of Mexico. That's getting a lot of quakes, a lot of activity. The east coast of the United States as well is getting a lot of quake activity. That's because of the movement of one of the plates there. And I think we'll go to the next slide to explain that. Okay, two major fault lines in America are being stretched and stressed and squeezed and squashed as a result of this movement in the North American plate. First, there's the well-known San Andreas fault line, which runs through Western California, and everyone has heard of the San Andreas fault. Now, Marty, admit. Okay, we'll get you in, Marty. Okay, what caused the terrible fires in Los Angeles in January this year? Well, we get the two major theories. One is, global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, and things heated up and there was a big fire and blah, blah, blah. That's the standard establishment explanation. Then we get the space cowboy lunatic fringe explanation, which is that distant energy weapons based on satellites shot down lasers and started the fires deliberately. The United States government started the fires deliberately so they could burn out big sections of Los Angeles so that the rich people could buy up land at a cheap price. That's the weird theory that's circulating. And a lot of people believe that, by the way, sad to say. What happened, according to the Zetatalk explanation, is that the North American plate, or that western edge of it, is moving south, but the Pacific plate to the west is moving north. So guess what happens when the edges of two tectonic plates, major tectonic plates, intersect? Well, you got some friction. In fact, a lot of friction as that rock substrata grinds against each other. Now, California has been getting bushfires for some years now. It's not just this year, dating back a good 5-6 years. Some northern parts of California around Frisco and north, they got some pretty bad ones. It's all due to tectonic plate movement and friction, both the major plates and also some minor subplates. Like you can see in the top left-hand corner of that diagram, the Juan de Fuca ridge, there's the Juan de Fuca plate or subplate. It's pushing into the western part of the North American plate, causing this friction. And that's why California has been hit by some really bad fires in recent, months and years. Do the scientists want us to know the real explanation? Of course not. They don't want people to know. Hey, if people knew, they might all move out of Los Angeles and move inland, away from the fault line. And we couldn't have that, could we? Because property prices might plummet in LA. Next slide, please. Okay, excuse me. Far more important in terms of coming Earth changes is the not so well-known New Madrid fault line or seismic zone. And you can see in the diagram on the right, the approximate extent of the New Madrid fault line. It starts in the state of Louisiana, actually just north of New Orleans, and then it sort of runs up to Missouri. New Madrid actually is a town in Missouri, and then it sort of goes east, heading into the New England states, and it intersects other fault lines. There's the East Coast fault line, which is shown in the two diagrams on the left. And then the New Madrid fault also intersects what's called the Ramapo fault. And guess what? The Ramapo fault actually extends as far as New York City. So that's not really good news if you're a New Yorker. You don't really want to be anywhere near the Ramapo fault if and when the New Madrid fault snaps, because it's going to have major consequences right through that eastern portion of the United States. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a explanation from Zetatalk. I think it's a couple of years ago. What does this do to the North American plate? It pulls it at a diagonal, ripping the rock fingers along the New Madrid fault, such that land to the east of the Mississippi moves up into the east toward New England. The land to the west of the Mississippi moves down into the west. This does more than tear most of the bridges along the Mississippi. So they got some serious, it's a serious situation that's unfolding in America. Next slide, please. Okay, Zetatalk for the past 2 years actually has been predicting that the New Madrid fault line is about ready to crack. or call it a major movement or an adjustment or a fracture, unzipping, call it whatever you want. It hasn't happened, but there are indicators now, and I can't go into the details, so we just don't have the time, that it's about to happen, and there have been many more during the past 2 years. Needless to say, that will affect a significant part of the United States, but no one knows exactly when it will happen. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, way out on a limb, in fact, and state that in a recent meditation I had, I asked certain highly developed spiritual beings when they thought or predicted that the New Madrid would snap or unzip or whatever. And I was told fairly clearly it would be in the 3rd week of May. That's next month, folks. That's between May 14th and the 21st. Now, I may have got that right, or I may have got that wrong. We shall see. I think what's been happening the last 2 years is that there's been a certain divine dispensation, grace from on high. The hierarchy or the interplanetary council, call it whatever you wish, that has prevented the New Madrid from making the final big adjustment. But that period of time, I reckon, is coming to an end. And that's why I was told it would be the 3rd week of May. Well, we'll see. Maybe there'll be another dispensation. Maybe at the last moment, the hierarchy of the Council of the World will say, okay, we'll give it another few weeks, we'll give it another month. No one really knows, but that's what I'm getting at this point in time. We shall see. Time will tell, as it always does. Next slide, please. All right, what's happening in South America? Well, as mentioned earlier, the South American tectonic plate is shifting west. And you can see the diagram on the left there. And I forget which year that was from, but it's already gone about 250 miles to the west, 400 plus kilometers. It's shifting to the west and also slightly moving south. I don't think the southern movement isn't that much, but the western movement certainly is in evidence. And you can see from the earthquake map on the right, they're getting quakes along the west coast of South America. Next one, please. Meanwhile, the African plate is rolling to the east and also dropping south, thus causing the Mediterranean Sea to widen. And this is called the Africa roll in Zeta-Talk terminology. Okay, the Mediterranean pulls apart and deepens. What does this mean for the great slumbering volcano at Santorini, also known as Thera? We covered this at the beginning of the lecture. Thera exploded during the last patches of Nibiru and will explode again. So they're predicting it's going to happen again. And as mentioned in the last, about a month ago, a month and a half ago, whatever exactly it was, we have seen many quakes and aftershocks hit Santorini to the point that hundreds of the residents there have left for the Greek mainland. They know or they feel it's not safe, and I don't blame them. I would be getting the hell out of there as well if I was living on Santorini and was getting hit by quakes or aftershocks on a daily basis or whatever. Meanwhile, as the African roll progresses, pulling this part of the Mediterranean floor open, the truth about the approach of Nibiru is withheld from the public. Now, the African roll has much more of an influence than just causing earthquakes and aftershocks on Santorini. The African roll, because it's moving in a clockwise direction, it's starting to pressurize or push against the Sinai Peninsula, which is between Eastern Egypt and, of course, Western Israel, especially the Gaza Strip. The prediction, which the authorities in Israel know about, they know about this all too well, is that Israel in the near future will become an island in the Mediterranean. Do you think that prediction has any bearing on what we've seen unfold in the Gaza Strip in the last 15 months since October 2023? They know something's going on. Yes, they do. And they're preparing to cleanse Greater Israel of any elements they deemed unworthy. That's my explanation. You can decide for yourself. Next slide, please. Okay, the movements or rolls of the South American and African plates are having a profound global impact. Now, here's what's happening, folks, which you're not being told about because the authorities don't want you to know. The Atlantic Ocean is widening, but the Pacific Ocean is compressing. And that is becoming a major realignment of the oceans and continents of the world. And all that is in preparation for the big event, which is the predicted pole shift of planet Earth. Next slide, please. We can see a close-up of that earlier diagram from Facebook, which Sri Kirti forwarded about a week ago, whatever. See, the South Atlantic Ocean is basically, I think it's called the Atlantic Ocean Rift or the North Atlantic Ocean Rift. That's actually widening as Africa rolls to the right and South America rolls to the left. And between North America and Europe, there's also a widening going on. And I talked about this and what was predicted for Europe in the lecture 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. I can't really go into that now. It's fairly complex. Anyway, next slide, please. Okay, according to Zetatalk, as the daily Earth wobble continues and gets worse, the final result will be a major pole shift of Earth to about 90 degrees from what it is now. And this is the Zetatalk prediction for what the new Earth will look like after the pole shift. Okay, first of all, we got a new North Pole. It's off the eastern part of South America. That's Brazil, where Brazil sort of juts into the Atlantic. That will be the new North Pole. And that, of course, is not good news for Brazil because the new North Pole eventually is going to get pretty cold. And they will probably have to move or immigrate if they want to survive. The new South Pole, according to this prediction, will be around Sri Lanka or just south of Sri Lanka. And what about the new equator? Well, guess what? It's going to run right from Antarctica right up to probably the Arctic. Okay, we'll admit someone else here. Interestingly enough, the new equator is supposed to run right through the two islands of New Zealand, North and South Islands. So New Zealand, from being a rather cold country, is supposed to become a very warm one. So if this is even partially accurate, it's going to be pretty major occurrence, pretty major event. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what the new Earth is going to look like according to Zetatalk. Africa is doing pretty well, but Europe is not looking so good. Asia, most of it's okay, but India, most of India is gone and underwater, also Sri Lanka. Now, God only knows if this prediction is going to come true or not. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, but it's going to be a major realignment or rearrangement of Earth. And we can see in the second diagram, that whole northeastern part of South America, which is low-lying in it, that's all the Amazon basin, by the way. That's all that becomes part of the sea. So there's not much left of South America, sadly, in this predicted model. North America has some big changes as well. Now, looking at the diagram at the bottom, what we see for Australia is unfortunately a very dire prediction. The western two-thirds of Australia is predicted to go down beneath the waves. Goodbye. The only safe places will be along the eastern part of Australia. That's Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland. Now, this is a prediction. Do predictions always come true? Well, of course not. Will it be this bad? We don't know. We will have to wait and see. But that's what is predicted in the Zetatalk analyses. And that's one reason why the authorities are so desperate to relegate Zetatalk and the information to the dust heap. The tip. It's all fantasy, all delusion. things are going to continue as they are now for the next 10, 50, 100,000 years. No worries, mate. But we shall see. We shall see. Next slide, please. Okay, what's the Zetatalk prediction for Australia? Well, interesting. They say Australia will be both in a good and bad situation after the pole shift. The western 2/3 will go suddenly underwater due to the plate shared with India sliding under the Himalayas. That's the western part of the northwestern part of the Indo-Australian plate, basically sliding under the Himalayas, and most of India is gone except for the part where the Himalayas start. However, the eastern 1/3, along with New Zealand, will benefit from this. It will raise slightly out of the water. It will gain land above where the melting ice caps will place sea levels within 2 years after the pole shift. And so even with the rising seas from melting poles, the mountains in eastern Australia and New Zealand will afford safe living areas. During those moments when the Earth's crust stops moving after having been dragged along the core during the pole shift, the western half of Australia will suddenly go under the waves. This will seem to the stunned residents as though a tidal wave were steadily moving inland, and where the crest of the wave will not at first be high, the waters will just keep rising until all not afloat are drowned. So it's not a good prediction for WA, I hate to say it. Those in boats may survive, though there's the risk of capsizing. They will find themselves out at sea and the washing about that will occur afterwards. So if you believe Zetatalk even a little, you're not going to be living anywhere close to WA because it's going down. But do predictions always happen? Or always take place as predicted? Of course not. So we don't know. But personally speaking, I really wouldn't want to be anywhere in or near WA. Next slide, please. We have described the plunging of the western 2/3 of Australia as quite dramatic and steep. Meanwhile, the eastern part levels off to a bending of the plate through the center of Australia. This can almost be seen if one looks at a relief map of Australia, as the lowlands of Australia, where the bending occurs, are between the eastern and western mountain ranges. This is heavy lifting and more than mere bending in the center of Australia can alleviate. Okay, and the two diagrams are basically a worm's eye view of how the land will look looking north. Now, this is from somewhere on the New South Wales-Queensland border. And we can see that there will be two bends. The Coral Sea on the right-hand side will remain, but there will be a bend somewhere, let's say, middle Queensland or Western Queensland, and then another bend further west. The diagram at the bottom is a worm's view, probably from the Victoria-New South Wales border. And here we're talking about the Tasman Sea between Australia and New Zealand. And there will be a bending as well. So there'll be a bending, but not a breaking of that portion of Australia that doesn't actually go underwater, which is predicted to be the western 2/3, i.e. WA, and a large part of South Australia and the Northern Territories, the western part of the Northern Territories. That's a prediction. Believe it or not, that's up to you. Analyze it or not, that's up to you as well. But that's the prediction. Okay, next slide. Okay, what is the timing of the pole shift? Well, earlier when I first started reading Zetatalk in 2011, they wouldn't even give a time. They said, no, we're not going to give a time for the pole shift for various reasons I won't go into. But I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, they started to say 2026. And now the latest prediction, as of late last year, they predict the pole shift will occur in the late months in 2026 or the early months of 2027. Personally speaking, I believe that the hierarchy will allow humanity as much time as possible to prepare for the event, and therefore I vote for early 2027. But early 2027 is not that far off in time, to state the obvious. And what we're seeing right now with all these earthquakes going off right around the world on a daily basis almost, is the Earth is getting ready for something big. And the something big, according to Zetatalk, is a pole shift. And that's not very far off in time. Make up your own mind by all means. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now I think what we'll do, this is sort of the second part of the lecture. I won't go into this because we got about a quarter of an hour left. And I think we'll, at this point in time, we'll stop here at this point in time and ask for any questions or comments or whatever. Okay, I'm going to throw something out. I happen to believe in the veracity of the Zeta Talk predictions. It's my personal belief. My advice, for what it is worth, and this is in the latter part of the second half of the slide presentation, which we don't have time for tonight. Get ready as best you can. Get a supply of food. I mean, gardens are the best. I mean, Shakirti is a keen gardener. We are too, and some of you good people are as well, I think. Prepare your gardens, plant your fruit trees, but also stock up on food, grains, whatever necessary items. I'd say between a 3 to 6 month supply, if you can afford it. And some people can't afford it, of course. You also have to prepare yourself, and this is even more important, spiritually, psychically, emotionally, spiritually, for what's going to be a big shock. The pole shift is not a cup of tea or a night out, a day out. It's not a picnic. It's not a pleasant excursion. It's a major event, and it's going to have profound implications right across the world, right around the world, if it does happen. And I personally believe we're headed in this. Just look at the earthquakes we've been seeing. You know, something really big is unfolding, to state the obvious. So that means that you've got to find your core, your own spiritual base, whatever you believe in, you know, whatever divine beings or entities you depend upon for protection and guidance and comfort and spiritual sustenance. Because a time will come, in my opinion, when we, the people who have a spiritual basis and can provide some help and comfort to those who are still ignorant of what's going on. And there's a massive amount of ignorance in the world, as we know, a lot of stupidity, a lot of ignorance. There's an awakening, of course, and that's the good news. A certain percentage of humanity is awakening, and that's the really good news. But a lot of people are asleep, and they believe in what the authorities, the powers that be, the governments, the scientists, whatever, are pumping out, which is mostly garbage, in my opinion. It's just rubbish. It's pathetic rubbish, actually. But anyway, that's another story. So you've got to prepare spiritually. Now, for those of you living in or near coastal areas that are 100 meters or less of elevation above sea level, you people have got to do some serious praying. If you can't move to higher ground, and many of you can't, I know, because of the financial limitations or whatever limitations, you've really got to call in a very strong way upon whatever forces, whatever divine beings, whether it's, you know, Jesus Christ, the Buddhas, the hierarchy, whatever, for protection. Because it is predicted that just prior to the pole shift, the waters around the coastal areas will tend to, let's say, conglomerate or clump up or whatever. And that's not good news if you're living less than 100 meters above sea level. So for you people, I strongly suggest that you do the best you can to bring divine protection into your home and property. Because when the pole shift does happen, if it does, and I, you know, strongly believe it will, those people who have that divine connection may well be spared the worst. That's my personal belief. Those who do not have that connection, sadly, unfortunately, are going to suffer, and suffer quite badly, in my humble opinion. Now, you can take that however you want. You can take that advice, you can work with it. You can make up your own mind, of course. You have to make up your own mind to do whatever you think is appropriate in terms of preparation for this very big event, which is coming. And it's basically been covered up by the powers that be because they don't want to panic people. They don't want us to get too upset. They don't want us to know that we've been lied to since 1983, when Nibiru was first announced. Now, Kat, if you could kindly go back to the slideshow, I will actually go into that second part. Can you do that? Yeah, just next slide. Okay, here we go. This is what happened. On 31 December 83, an article appeared in the Washington Post newspaper titled "Mystery Heavenly Body Discovered." They didn't use the word Nibiru, but that was what American astronomers had located. Next slide, please. This is from the Washington Post article. A heavenly body, possibly as large as the giant planet Jupiter, possibly so close to Earth that it would be part of the solar system, has been found in the direction of the constellation Orion. Orion, remember, I mentioned that in the very first slide. That's the direction that Nibiru comes from. It was discovered by an orbiting telescope. But it's mysterious. So mysterious is the object that astronomers do not know if it's a planet, a giant comet, a nearby protostar, never got hot enough to become a star, just a galaxy, etc. They don't know. They couldn't tell at that point in time. But then what happened was they calculated that, yeah, it's headed toward Earth, and it's gonna come close to Earth in some decades' time, and the consequences are not going to be pleasant. And that's when the cover-up really started. Okay, that's all. That's all I'm going to talk about regarding the slideshow. We'll cover this again probably next week. Anyone have any questions or comments at this point in time?
Yeah, I've got a question, Zachary. I just wondered if you'd had a look ahead to the potential astrological indicators. I mean, I think the North Node will have moved into Aquarius at that time.
No, I haven't looked actually.
Yeah.
I haven't looked. I mean, you're an astrologer, so why don't you take a peek?
Yeah. I'll have a look.
Tell us what you see.
Yeah.
Feel something really big is going on. They can feel it. They're getting it from their subconscious. But when they ask for answers from the authorities, what do they get? From the governments. Oh, well, the COVID era is over. You could go back to making a living, shop till you drop. What are we getting from the scientists? Oh, it's carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere that's causing all this stuff to go down. What do we get from the media? Well, complete garbage there is probably obvious. So many people, or some people, let's say, I don't know what percentage again, they're in a very difficult position because they know subconsciously something really big is unfolding. They know that. They feel it. They can see it. But they don't know what it is. They're not getting any answers from the establishment or from religious leaders, because religious leaders have been quite derelict in their duties as well to explain what's going on, which is a whole other discussion, we don't have time for. So what happens? They're getting this chasm or this gap in their consciousness, their subconscious, and some of them are turning to violence. They're turning to violent actions. And we can see an increase in violence right around the world, whatever country you look. In fact, in some countries where they've never had violent attacks before, they're getting these really strange outbursts where people are going nuts and, doing crazy stuff with knives or guns or, God only knows. So yeah, that's what's happening, you see. And the closer we get to the pole shift, the more unsettled things are going to be. And that's why Zeta Talk for a long time has been advocating for the powers that be, the authorities, to just come clean and admit that Nibiru exists. Just come clean, admit we're heading for a pole shift. Just come clean and admit that if you're living in a coastal area, most coastal areas around the world, and you're below 100 meters or 120 meters, you're not particularly safe. But they won't do it. Thing up there, that thing that looks like a double helix. And I still think the authorities are going to say, that's nothing. That's nothing to be concerned about. Unbelievable. See, they've been lying to us since 1983. We'll go into that more in the next session, which is probably part of next week's session. And if they came clean now and told the truth, we would have to say, oh, well, you've been lying to us for like the last 3 or 4 decades, haven't you? Oh, no, you can trust us. Oh, you can put your faith in us. we love you so much, Australia or New Zealand or whatever, and we're so concerned, and blah blah blah. And this Senate talk stuff is all crap. It's all rubbish. Go ahead, Kat. You had a question?
Oh, I just wondered if I could ask Zachary if I can just post a link in the chat. It's a lecture that was done about 14 years ago with the Theosophical Society in Atlanta, and it kind of talks to your point around this really feels like a wake-up call where we really work out that we're not going to be rescued by our government. They're
That's
not
right.
going to save
That's
us.
for sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to see if I could get your permission to post a link, and I do find this. There is optimism that we are going to see a shift, and we are going to become more conscious and wake up to the stories that we've been told. So I'd hope for everyone to leave feeling like this is a terrible situation, because there is some positivity in it as we do evolve as the souls that we are. So just wanted to see if
I agree completely. And the good thing about the pole shift is things are getting so corrupt on Earth now that we need a big major change.
Yeah.
And it's happening in front of our eyes, and it's going to get worse around and after the pole shift. I mean, has anyone? Oh, I guess Shrikirti, have you heard about the new head of the World Economic Forum? He's a guy, Klaus Schwab. I mean, you probably heard about him. He's gone now. In fact, he's being raked over the coals by the WEF because he apparently misspent millions of dollars on some personal luxurious mansion in Switzerland or whatever. I don't know, crazy stuff. But the new head of the WEF is he's an interim head. He hasn't been officially confirmed as a permanent head. He's the head of Nestle. He's based in Europe somewhere because he speaks German. And I was sent a link either today or yesterday, and I took a look at the guy, and to my astonishment, I saw that his left eye seems like a bionic eye. It does not seem like a human eye. And I thought, oh my God. But then, of course, that's what the WF has been saying for years. We want to go transhuman, right? We want to merge the human and the technological. So yeah, it really makes perfect sense that this new guy, and you can look yourself on the internet for the story, is some weird cyborg type of dude, in my opinion, and he's the interim head of the WEF. So it's getting so corrupt now. So corrupt. I had a discussion just this afternoon with a builder I use, and he mentioned, BlackRock and Vanguard. Well, they own everything now. And I say, yeah, they pretty well do, but it's not. They're not very, very, very benevolent, are they? And he said, no, definitely not. So we've got to break it up somehow. And Trump is doing that in a sense in America. Whether you agree with the tactics he's using to break it up or not, that's a different story. But he's trying to make some really deep changes. And we need those deep changes because, well, look what's happening here in Australia with the inflation, cost of living. Look what's happening with the election. We're getting these promises. I mean, the latest absurdity from Peter Dutton and the coalition is apparently they want to spend $100 billion, I don't know how many years, to bolster Australia's defense forces. Are you kidding, Peter Dutton? With so many people suffering from cost of living pressures, I mean, 3.3 million persons is the figure I've read are below the poverty line in Australia, and Dutton wants to spend $100 billion on arms during the next so many years if he's elected. Well, the good news is he's fading in the polls. I mean, he's an absolute horrible campaigner. We don't have to go into that. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. He backflips. He makes all these gas backflips, and Albo is just eating it up, man. Albo is just watching him self-destruct, and he's got that sly Chester cat grin on his face that some politicians have when they see the opposition just ruining themselves, just destroying themselves. So anyway, yes, we need change, and there is an awakening going on. The Earth after the pole shift will be, in my opinion, in some ways, a more kind place, a more compassionate place. And why is that? It's because those of us who survive will have to help each other. We're going to have to help each other in survival mode. we can no longer work ourselves to the point where we get wealthy and dream about acquiring $1 million properties, or whether we want to buy a Mercedes-Benz or a BMW is our little toy. That's all going to be finished. Gretchen, you got your hand up? Okay, I see Gretchen waving. Any other comments or questions?